$750 down, $500 down, $750 bid, now 1,000 down, 1,250 down, 250. Welcome to Dallas, Texas. It's the Mike McGavel Jones Show, broadcasting live from Lincoln Center in the heart of North Dallas, right here at the LBJ Freeway and the North Dallas Tollway right here in beautiful Dallas, Texas. And it is a beautiful day this May the 11th, 2020, as we continue to deal with the pandemic situation that's going on. Although things are lightening up a little bit, some of the businesses in Dallas and around the state of Texas are open, but it's certainly not the normal that we're used to. And so we're still navigating the waters, and hope that everyone's doing well, and that you're all, getting your way through this and surviving what we have to deal with across the United States and around the world. I had a friend of mine call, actually from, the Middle East last week, and the first thing he did when he got there, he works there, and he had to do a 14-day, lockdown, and so that's what he's doing right now. So we send our friend Kevin Ricketts from Houston our best, and hope he's doing well. And then I also got a note from my friends down in South Africa, and they're dealing with the same thing we are. In fact, my friend Alon Cowan in Cape Town, who a lot of our auction friends know, he did say that he's not been at home in 8 weeks. He has a second home, and they've been at their vacation home. But he said, "Isn't it amazing how we took our freedoms for granted?" And indeed, we have. So as we move out of that, we've got a great show today. I'm very, very excited to invite to our show Mr. Rick W. Goodman. He is a multi-Grammy award-winning producer. He is president of Goodman and Associates and Circle of Friends Productions. And for those of you who follow music of all kinds, of course, I'm a big music nut. Everybody knows that. And I love going to Nashville and around the country to shows. But if you are a fan of gospel music and various types of country music, you have probably seen some of Rick's work. And he is also the legacy of the Happy Goodman family, and so he's got the history, he's got the stories, and we've got the tapes and the film, and we're going to share some video with you during the show today. And of course, his mother Vestal she's just one of the queens of gospel music, and we're going to talk about the family, and right now I'd like to welcome Rick Goodman to the show. Good morning, Rick.
Good morning, Mike.
Glad to have you on. And you're right outside of Nashville, Tennessee today. You're in Brentwood, and most of us who've ever been to Nashville, especially if you've ever done the tour buses and rode around and looked at the city, Brentwood and Franklin and all those towns, that that's where all the stars either live or have lived, and so you're in the heart of country music and gospel music.
Absolutely. Our neighbors used to be T.G. Shepherd and Marty Robbins, and different ones lived in this neighborhood for decades before we moved into this neighborhood.
Sure. So tell me, where were you actually born?
I was born in Evansville, Indiana. My parents were living there for a short time, and I was born in Evansville, and immediately we kind of left, and I haven't lived there. I don't even have any recollection of living in Evansville. I've traveled all across this country,
Sure. So kind of give me your life story. I like for people to tell their story instead of me reading to you. I do love the backdrop though. It looks like I see some guitars and some plaques on the wall, and maybe a Grammy or two or three. We'll have to talk
Exactly.
about all that.
There, this house, our home, is like a museum. I mean, everybody, the piano behind me, my dad wrote his songs there at that piano through the years. And Andre Crouch just played that piano and came in here and sang. We'd sing till 2 or 3 in the morning. And my mom would sing and he would sing. And Bill Gaither has come by and played that piano. All the awards, the plaques hanging around our home, it's just like it's like walking into a museum. And this was the home of my parents, Vestal and Howard, and my wife and I, Diane. We all lived here together. We were mostly traveling around the country and the world. So when we would come home, this was here. We were here for 2, 3, maybe 4 days, and off again on a bus or the airport.
So you're born in Evansville, and then what was the kind of what happened? Where did they go to? Where did they migrate to?
Well, they migrated to a town in Kentucky called Madisonville, which is on Highway 41A that goes from Chicago straight down the middle of the country. And they went to Madisonville. They were traveling around the country doing revivals and singing. And my dad was the first of 8 children. And my grandfather was a Spanish-American War veteran. He was 50 and my grandmother was 25 when they met and married. And then they had 8 kids. Wow. And my dad raised the brothers and sisters and taught them how to sing and play an instrument. And then he met my mom at the Ryman Auditorium. They were there, and he first met her at an old tent meeting down on Sand Mountain, Alabama, out of Fife, Alabama, right up the hill from where the group Alabama lived in Fort Payne in DeKalb County. And she went to the all-night sing at the Ryman, and he said, Vestal, let's go get married. And so they drove to Mississippi and got married, and then I was the first child born in 1952, and they went to Madisonville again in 65 is when they settled down to move there. I think it was 62 or 3. They moved there and started a church in an old pet store that was tore down at the railroad track. And people came to the church. They ended up staying there for several decades. And then I believe it was 1984, they decided to move back to Nashville. And they had lived in a couple more places, different cities that had airports and everything, because all they were doing from 1980 to 1990 was traveling and singing at the Baptist National Convention, at revivals at churches. Go there for a day, end up staying there for a week, and so they did that, and in 1984, they moved back to Nashville into this home. And my wife and I had sold our home, and they said, we're traveling so much, y'all stay here with us. And we did so. And I'd say a lot of people could not do that, living with parents and in-laws, but it was just perfect for Diane and myself and my mom and my dad. And so that was my history, and I started playing drums way back in the 60s. I've got a picture in the 50s. My dad traveled with sisters and brothers and my mom in an old beat up Chrysler. It wasn't a fancy limousine like you think limousine today, but it was an old stretch Chrysler limousine. And I've got a picture of me when I was 4 years old, 3 and 4 years old, playing the ukulele, standing on the stage at the end of the piano. My parents always singing gospel music, but they toured with Minnie Pearl and Roy Acuff, and so they would sing gospel always, but they were doing that tour. I remember Tyler, Texas. I played my ukulele and stepped off the edge of the stage and fell about 7 or 8 feet, and the people just gasped. I got up, they brushed me off, continued on the stage playing, strumming my little ukulele with my parents singing. So I grew up doing that. And I don't want to overtalk here, but in the 60s, my Uncle Rusty, who was singing with the governor of Louisiana, Jimmy Davis, and my Uncle Sam moved back to Kentucky, and they said, hey, let's sing together and do an album. And my mom did not want to do that. You'd have to read her bio. She wrote a bio and told the whole story and everything, but she was praying against going back on the road and singing. She liked it. She felt like, okay, God, this is our calling. I want to be in church, and this is what we need to do. So with that being in mind, they came to Nashville, and much of the recordings before then were, Hovey Lister and the Statesman, Hovey playing the piano, the Blackwood Brothers had piano. That was the recordings. But I may have told you, Mike, they came to Nashville and they hired the A-Team. And the A-Team was the musicians that played on all the country hit records. But they hired 6 musicians, Pig Robbins, piano, Junior Husky on bass, Walter Haynes, Harold Bradley, and Harold and Owen were the people that helped create the Nashville sound and had the first studio. And there was an old Quonset hut that became on Music Row here in Nashville, became the Quonset hut became Columbia Studios later on. But they went there, rented the studio, paid $600 for the studio for the day, and they paid $600 for the musicians, $100 a piece. And that's the way they started recording. The next record was at RCA B, which is now the Country Music Hall of Fame Museum studio on Music Row. And, it's just amazing. Harold Bradley and the Bradleys were just such good friends of my family and to me. I mean, I grew up going in the studios and sitting in the corner listening to all the musicians record. I mean, it was amazing. And I was there when Jerry Reed played on the Goodman family sessions and at RCA, and he said, hey, Rick, let me tell you this. I'm fixing to go in and Chet is going to record my first album coming up. I wrote this song, and he's sitting there with his guitar, and Jerry Reed was just, what an awesome guy. And he started playing, well, you better not mess with the U.S. mail, my friend. And that was my experience around sitting around musicians and getting to hear the best in the world, and especially the studio, because they created what all the other artists were singing on the stage. They were doing their records that these guys created. Sure. And that's kind of the way that started. So I started playing drums with the family, then moved into producing albums with the family, designing the graphics and the artwork for the family, and it went on from there. And then it blossomed into, all of a sudden, I'm running into people and producing projects with them and doing television shows and you name it. I mean, I've been so blessed to have met all of the people around the country and in Nashville that I know and I call friends. And I don't name drop, but they're my friends. Marty Stewart is my friend. Larry Gatlin is my friend. Vince Gill. My mom only called me Ricky, and Vince only calls me Ricky. He called me last week checking on me, and I had checked on him, and I called him. My phone rang, picked up. He says, "Hey, Ricky, Vinny here." And I said, "Hey, Vinny." And we laughed and talking about all the things that are going on with the COVID-19, and him and Amy are doing great. I've just had a blessed life when it comes to knowing the people in all forms of music, all kinds of music.
Sure. Well, I know that, I don't remember what year it was. It's probably been 15 years ago or so, maybe 16, somewhere in that direction. We were invited to come backstage at the Grand Ole Opry, and it just so happens that it was Vince's night to play. And, we got to meet him and spend a few minutes with him. Super nice guy. And then I guess it's been about 4 years ago, I did an auction here in Dallas. In fact, across the street at the Galleria, at the Weston Galleria, with Amy Grant. And of course, I think we were with one of our Christian groups. We do a lot of work with Christian Works and another group that deals with on-stage dementia and things of that nature. And so she was performing there for that event, and she was fantastic. And of course, she's been affected by, the dementia problem with her family. And she told her story, and she gave her testimonial, and it was fantastic. And but anyway, as you know, I collect guitars, and one of my prized possessions that normally sits in the corner in my bedroom is a guitar signed by Vince, and he was just a prince of a guy. The other thing is, you mentioned Marty Stewart. I've met Marty many times, and I've gone to shows that he's done here and also up in Missouri and places like that. And Missouri, actually, Marty, without a question, it is the historian for country music and blues and things that are related to country music. He's got his show that he does, and he's got his museum that he's building, and he was collecting things before anybody thought to collect. And he was gathering kind of like a squirrel. He was going to garage sales and estate sales and gathering. And when people, if you haven't seen it, you probably have, but if the people that are watching today, if you've not seen, go to I believe it was CBS Sunday Morning. They did a feature on Marty here about 3 or 4 years ago, showing his vast collection of items. And it could have been 60 minutes, but one or the other. He just has a treasure trove of things, and there's just very few people like Marty Stewart, and of course his great wife Connie. Tell me about. Well, I want to know more about growing up, because I know your parents traveled a lot. When of course, I'm assuming there's times where you couldn't go on the trip. So, who took care of you, and how did that all work out?
Well, growing up when I was young, we had a lady that
I think we froze. I think Rick froze. Technology.
He may be receiving a call. He did. There you go.
Okay, Rick, you went away for a minute, so you're back.
Okay.
You had a lady that lived with you.
Yeah, I had a lady that would come over and would stay with us, and then we went to church people there at our church in Kentucky. We would stay with them for a weekend when my mom and dad would go out and sing. But it was all such a transitional time. And when I was very young and they were doing revivals before they started their church in Kentucky, I would travel on the road with them. And like I said, I was young traveling. So it was, growing up it went by so quick for me. I saw every city in the country. We always said, boy, when you leave Texas, you're about where you're going, because Texas was so big. And I think we played every city in Texas, and everything. We'd play the high school auditoriums, and then over in Marshall, Texas. They built that nice city auditorium, where a lot of towns across the country didn't have that, you know. But it was just, I mean, it was just amazing traveling all those years and traveling on the road and getting to meet everybody and play drums with everybody and be on the stage and run the sound and the lights. We did a 1976 bicentennial tour with the Happy Goodman family and the country comedian Jerry Clower and my folks.
Sure.
And we did that tour, and we had a live orchestra with our 6-piece band. And then I wore a headset and called the lighting for the spotlights and counted off the songs and played drums all at the same time. What a time it was.
Well, you've been, listen, you lived at the perfect time to me, for live music, for stage music, for recording music and records, and you know, you mentioned Jerry Clower. This society doesn't know a lot. You know, you'll mention a name and they'll go, well, I've never heard of that before. Well, Jerry Clower, of course, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jerry was from Macomb, Mississippi. And Macomb, ironically, is every year either is our #1 or #2 most successful United Country real estate office in the United States. And, you know, as we come up on our 100th anniversary, but Macomb, Mississippi, and I'll tell you another thing. So Jerry Clower was from Macomb, and he's always references his hometown. He had stories. Yeah. He could make up a story like nobody's business. And, of course, you remember he used to do a radio show with Bill Mack. They did a church show, kind of a church show. It was a neat Christian show on Sundays, and I used to listen to it. But when I was in radio, I got to listen to it in the studio. But the very first online simulcast auction that I ever did, this is old school now, but I did my very first one in Macomb, Mississippi. And here's the deal. Today, you know, I can put on one of those for about, I don't know, $500 or $1,000. The technology is like a commodity now. It's like technology in a box. But back in 1996, 1997, eBay was only a year or two old. I thought I was cutting edge. You know, I got talked into doing this thing. I spent $10,000 or $11,000 to produce this thing, and then we realized, guess what? There aren't that many people that have computers, and they darn sure don't in Macomb, Mississippi. So,
I hear you. I hear you. I mean, those were the times that were the fun times. You mentioned Bill Mack, which, like you say, a lot of people wouldn't realize, but radio is the thing. And he wrote a song called Jesus Take a Hold. And Connie Smith recorded it. And my mom, on her first solo album, recorded Jesus Take a Hold because we loved Bill Mack so much.
Yeah.
And my parents came to the Will Rogers Auditorium in Fort Worth and did their final concert in that auditorium in the late, probably 1999, 2000, somewhere like that. And a guy came out and made them honorary Texans and brought them a cowboy hat out a piece and everything. So I've still got the cowboy hat. It was an amazing time, an amazing night.
That was cool. Well, you know, anybody that was watching my show, I think it was 2 weeks ago, I did a show about, I had some discussions about country music, and I displayed that large gold record that Roy Acuff and Minnie signed, and T.G. Shepherd and all those people you mentioned, like Marty Robbins. But, you know, Bill Mack was the first disc jockey or radio personality that I ever met, and I met him at Panther Hall. And I met him with George Jones, which we're going to move this right over to, I know you knew George Jones, and I know that your mother had a great fondness for you. Could you share maybe a story? And I know we have a video I'm going to show here in just a little bit. You want to talk about George?
I'd love to talk about George. You know, he was always my hero and the best country singer in the world. And he was the king of country, and my mom was the queen of gospel. And but got a phone call. We were traveling on the road and got a phone call, and we had met George and seen him in Greensboro, North Carolina, probably a year before, if that long. And we got a phone call on the road from Ralph Emery to call that George had hit a bridge going to his house on Highway 96 down here in Franklin, just out of Franklin. And he was listening to the song from the studio had given him. He had just recorded in his CD player of his new record the song called Choices. And he was fiddling with the CD player. And George had gone back to drinking, and he had really never quit. But he had a big bottle of whiskey, less than full, in the car. He hit that bridge, a concrete bridge, and flipped that SUV off into the creek to the side. And they called us, and I called back, and I said, "Do we need to come home?" And his wife Nancy said no. Said they've got him stable and everything. And he had actually died in the helicopter. They revived him, but said they've got him stable right now. And Rick, and they're going to send him home. When you get home in a week, 10 days, call me. So I did. My wife usually drove my mom everywhere, but I said, I'll drive you. And I drove out. Nancy gave us the code to their gate at their home on their big farm. Drove up, went in the house. Nancy said, I'm not going back there. Said, you two just walk down the hallway, this long hallway, and had all his memorabilia on it, and go through the bedroom. He's in his sitting room back there. He won't talk to anybody. He won't eat. He won't even play with the grandkids. And we went in the room. George had his head down in his recliner and had it slumped down. And my mom said, George, and I stood in the doorway because I knew what was fixing to happen. You could just feel it. She said, George, are you ready to give up that drinking and drugging and that life and just give it all to Jesus? He raised his head and tears running down his face. He said, I sure am, Vestal. And she went over and sat down on the couch on the corner by his chair, took out her anointing oil and her handkerchief, said, raise your hands, George, and pray this prayer with me. And she led him to the Lord. And from that day on, he never drank, smoked. We would go and meet him once a week, at least sometimes 2 times a week, every week or other week. We would meet him at a restaurant to eat. And she'd call him, how you doing, George? Oh, Vestal, I'm still nicotine-free. I am alcohol-free. I'm even caffeine-free. I quit drinking coffee. And he said, do you think I need to quit singing country music? She said, Lord, no, George. Let the people see the difference in you. And the people saw it. His band members and the people saw it. And George was just a prince of a guy, a different person once Jesus came into his life that day. I will never forget it. And we were recording a CD project I produced called Vestal and Friends. And we actually did 2 of them, but the first one, Vestal and Friends 1, had Sandy Patty, Andre Crouch, Dolly was on it, and everything. And then there, George sang Angel Band, the song Angel Band. And when I wanted to do a video of it, so I got a film crew, and we shot it on film at his farm. And when he got to the second verse, I said, George, I want you to go with me, the highway patrol. I've got them to block off Highway 96. Won't be any traffic. I want you to walk across the highway and lean over and look over that bridge where you hit it. And the line where he says in the song says, I hear the noise of wings. I released 20 white doves that flew up over him from underneath and had cameras rolling in every different angle. I mean, it is a powerful video. Angel Band, George and Vestal.
Well, Rick, I'll tell you, you know, if somebody was watching the show about 4 weeks ago, I think it was 4 weeks ago, my backdrop when I was producing the show at home was George, the guitar George signed for the 50th anniversary of the National Auctioneer Association, and
Yeah.
Choices had just come out, and the piece on the wall behind me has a picture of me and George and the guitar. It's got a autographed copy of Choices, and I met him right after Choices came out. He was making the rounds at the record stores. He was drinking a lot of water, buddy, and I just remember. I think it was an important time for me to see him because I had seen him in the '60s. I met him in '68, '69,
Yeah.
and then went to several shows. And as a lot of people know, I had tickets for his very last show scheduled for Nashville, where everybody was going to come together and you know, and see him for the last performance in Nashville, Tennessee. And then, of course, he got ill and passed away, and that was devastating. But we have lots of great memories, and we got all the great CDs and records, and George Jones. Nobody will ever forget George Jones. I don't think I've never met a performer that didn't learn from him, didn't master their craft from him. You just
He was a
like you
gentle.
said.
He was a gentle soul too. You know, after the Lord came into his life, he was a gentle soul and such a great guy. I'm telling you, just a great guy. When my mom went to be with the Lord, he couldn't sing. He was going to sing Amazing Grace or Angel Band, and they sung Amazing Grace at the opening of the New Country Music Hall of Fame, and everything, and he couldn't do it. He was sitting behind me, and Vince came in and sung "Go Rest High on the Mountain." And George was just, I miss George dearly. To this day, I miss George. And,
I think, well, I appreciate the story, Rick, and that's probably why we're kindred spirits, because we love a lot of the same people and we know a lot of the same people. I'm gonna turn to Trelvis, our producer, and I believe he's queued up some of that song. We're not going to play the whole song, but we're going to play a snippet from that song, and of course your mother Vestal and George Jones.
My heavenly home, my spirit loudly sings the holy ones, behold they come. I hear the noise of wings. Oh, bear my longing heart to him who bled and died for me, whose blood now cleanses from all sin and gives me victory. Oh, come, angel band, come and around me stand. Oh, bear me away on your snowy wings to my immortal home. Oh, bear me away on your snowy wings to my immortal home.
Wow. How you like that, Rick?
Man, I miss them both. I miss them both dearly. I know a lot of fans and a lot of people do.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sending me that. I know that you had to scramble to get me some video and some other material that we're going to show here in just a little bit.
Okay.
I can't explain how, and you know, there are people that won't understand it, but there's something about George Jones and your mother singing together that is very emotional, and I just think it's wonderful. Can you tell, I've got some more stuff I want to talk about. Can you tell me about
All
those
right.
guitars that are behind you? Who signed those guitars? I see that.
Oh, well, this one, the acoustic guitar, is a guitar, it's a Taylor guitar that Vince and Amy give me and signed it to me. This red one is a tick bass that was, people in country music will know what a tick bass is. And it played the same notes that the upright bass player would play in a recording session. And that was handmade. It's a Gower body and neck. It was handmade by Leon Rhodes. And if you ever heard Ernest Tubb through the years say, "Take it away, Leon," that was Leon Rhodes, dear friend, one of the members of the A-Team of Nashville. That was his guitar. Was played on many of a hit song, and Harold Bradley played it. When Harold didn't have his guitar, he'd go, "Well, I'll go out. I don't want to go out to the car and get mine." So he would play that one. So they both signed it to me and wrote down the gauge of strings that are on it, and it's just a museum piece. And then under the grand piano, you can't see them, but there's like 3 or 4 guitar cases of signed guitars with all the country artists. I've got one guitar that's signed by every homecoming artist that was on those Gaither homecoming videos. Everybody, and I mean everybody's signature is on there, except J.D. Sumner. J.D. was not at a video shoot one day, and so J.D.'s not there. But if you want to name a gospel artist that was on the videos, they're on that guitar. It's a museum piece, and so I've just got so much memorabilia here in the house that just goes on and on and on.
So for the folks that don't know, that aren't familiar, tell us about those gatherings where you'd have the. Of course, I'm very familiar, and I think we're going to show a clip from one of them here in a few minutes, but. You know, this is an opportunity for many of the greatest gospel singers of all time to come together and either do a solo with the rest of them doing the backing, and much like you see the country music version of it. A lot of people see the country music versions of that.
Larry's Country Diner.
Yes. Yeah. Larry's Country Diner.
Country
That's
Diner.
right. That's right.
Larry Black is a great friend, and he started that as a spinoff to the Gaither homecoming videos, and he's a dear friend, and Larry did a voiceover for me on a video clip that introduced my parents as 1 minute 8 seconds long, while the auditorium was black and the concert was in the round, and it said, "Ladies and gentlemen, The Journey, 1968." And then it took us through the years, like it was 1 minute and 8 seconds long. Larry Black did the voiceover. What a great guy.
That's right.
But the Gaither videos, in 1990, got a phone call that Bill was recording a Gaither vocal band record over here at the studio. On what was that, on 12th Avenue South, back up there. And so it was kind of a log cabin looking studio. Oh, okay, I want Howard Vessel to come over, and Larry and Rudy's going to be here. Eva Mae Lefevre, James Blackwood, Hobie Lister. We would like them to come over. Where could I go but to the Lord? We're going to sing this song for the record. And when we got over there was one camera, handheld camera, and he was going around as they recorded. He was recording snippets of the song to do a music video. Wasn't really super planned out. And then everybody got to laughing and having a good time and singing more songs. And my dad played the piano. Eva Mae played the piano. They just had a great time. Instead of being in the studio for an hour and a half, I think they were there like 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
And when they left, they were going to throw, the record company was going to just jump the extra footage. And Bill said, no, let me take that. I want to look at it. And he put it together, and he called my mom and dad, and he said, this is going to be huge. I'm going to, up here in my recording studio in Anderson, in Alexandria, just outside of Anderson. Anderson is bigger than Alexandria. And Anderson's sitting on the interstate up there in Indiana. And so we went up there, and there was probably 110 artists crammed into this recording studio. And they were all sitting in chairs, and they just started singing songs and out of the old Red Book hymnal. And I mean, everybody was there. I mean, I can't name all the artists that were. It was incredible, and so many of them have passed away now. But it was the Homecoming series. And then the next thing that happened, he said, hey, I'm going to be the vocal band, and I believe Janet Pascal was going to be in Hampton, Virginia, in the Round Arena right there on the water. Said, you got to fly up. So Dad didn't want to go. No, I don't think I want to fly up. Okay. And so we went up there, and my wife and myself and my mom flew up. I rented from Budget a town car, drove over. The arena was full. It was full, and it was just like crazy because they had seen that video. And with that being said, it just snowballed from there. It just snowballed. And one day I called, my mom was going to be on the Statler Brothers show. And she was their second or third most requested guest on the Statler Brothers. It was the #1 show on TNN at the time. And I know you remember a producer named Bill Turner. And knew him as your friend. And Bill Turner and the guy that ran TNN at the time, they said, okay, we want Vestal to be on the Statler Brothers show. This is like her third appearance. I called the satellite company. You don't have satellite like you have it now, Dish and DirecTV and everything else. But I called New York and with a company called Group W and reserved 2 minutes of time to do an infomercial with a hymn project that my mom was coming out with just him, just the audio CD. And so I did that, set up an 800 number, a fulfillment company that was going to fulfill the orders. Okay, I'll just do this. And I got to looking, I figured it after it was over, Mike, this ain't right. I can't sell the retail price can only be $16, $17. So I called Barry Jennings, Bill Gaither's son-in-law, and I said, Barry, look, this will tie in real well. You guys need to sell those videos on TV. And he said, really? And I said, yes. You take my spot, and I'll sell you at wholesale, but make a couple. I'll sell you the CD, and you give the audio CD to everybody that orders this first Homecoming video on the TV show, on the Statler Brothers show. Well, they did it, and it was so big that the 800 lines were jammed. And from there, the Gaither Homecoming, as you see on TV now, that you can find where they're saying the Homecoming show and everything on all the different networks, Time Life has done them and everything. You see that. That's what spawned out of that. And to this day, if you order a video, you get the accompanying audio CD. So that's where getting a CD of audio come along with the videos.
I'm pretty
So-
sure you can see the homecoming, you can see those homecoming programs somewhere in the world 24 hours a day. No doubt
Oh,
about it.
absolutely.
It's been a mega success. Right now, I want to go to Trelvis, and we're going to play a clip of your mom. Okay?
Okay.
Eating bread. When my eyes shall close in bed, when I rise to worlds unknown, and behold thee on thy throne, rock of ages, cleft for me. Let me hide myself in thee. Let me hide myself in thee.
Well, if that doesn't if that doesn't move you, I don't know what will. And if that doesn't fill you with the Holy Spirit, I don't know what will either, Rick.
Absolutely. She believed every word she sang her entire life. I described her one time and I wrote it because we never had a publicist our entire life. We never had a publicist, and a lot of people did in gospel, contemporary Christian, country. Everybody had a publicist, but I was asked to write something, and I said, she sings a song with a lyric like Da Vinci painted a painting. You see it.
Yeah.
You literally see it. And that was her, and she was amazing. She was just, she had that, a lot of people or kids don't know what that is, but it's the Spirit of the Lord that was in her and that she lived and breathed, and the anointing. And you'll hear people way back, you would hear J-Lo on American Idol say, "Oh, I got the goosies." She didn't know what that was, but somebody would sing a song on there, and that'll make the hair stand up on your neck. That's what that does.
I had it just now.
I hear you. I hear you.
I've been very
Well, I
blessed.
tell you what, the homecoming videos are a blessing to so many people that get that, where we are in this country now, you can't get out. A lot of people can't get out, but for years, people that are in their home or in a nursing home or can't go to concerts, and they can click on that TV or put in that VHS or that DVD, and now you can go to YouTube and search and see all of these too. It's just amazing how the journey continues, because her theme was, "I wouldn't take nothing for my journey now," and that's the journey continues, and that's why I keep Goodman Family Ministries going, and that's our nonprofit, and I keep it going. My wife and I go out and speak. Oh, and by the way, next month in June, Diane and I will be married 50 years.
Oh, congratulations.
See, I had to color this gray hair in.
Well, just be happy you have hair, Rick.
That's
So,
good.
you have produced, and you produce shows and you produce albums and you've been on records and you worked with a lot of the greatest names in country music. And you mentioned Bill Turner a minute ago, and of course Bill Turner, and I told you the story when we were visiting early on. The well-known journalist in Nashville who is considered the authority when it comes to country music is Robert Orman. Robert Orman introduced me about 15 years ago, maybe 17 years ago, to Bill Turner Sr. Bill Turner. I met Bill in front of the Country Music Hall of Fame at the hotel at the Hilton. He didn't know me. I called him, told him what I needed. He came down in a single cab Ford pickup, F-150, stripped down, rubber floor mats, opened the door. It was like opening up a bar room because he was smoking cigarettes. There was about a 9-inch or 10-inch high stack of, it looked like a volcano. He didn't, once it went past the ashtray, it just became its own little mountain. I'd never seen that before in my life. And I thought, well, this guy's not going to live long. And so, but we became fast friends and ended up going to eat breakfast. And we would, anytime I was in Nashville over the last 15, 20 years, he would,
Right.
as I told you, he was best friends with Tom T. Hall. They were hunting buddies. He told me all kinds of Tom T. stories. And,
Yeah.
and Bill Sr., he was a producer of the Marty Robbins show and some of the Dolly shows and Porter Wagner
Absolutely.
show.
My parents worked with him on several shows.
Did they? Well,
Yes.
He was an interesting man, and I told you the story. I had gone to his home. Bill passed about 2 years ago. Quite devastating to me, his passing, but. People get older and they pass away, and I just have a hard time letting people go. But after the big flood, I was at Bill's home, and the big flood I'm talking about. That's the one that wiped out the Ryman and not the Ryman, but the Opry. And he lived basically on the river, on the Cumberland, right behind the Opry, and all the shops and all that. But anyway, I told Bill, I said, I bet you've got some really neat memorabilia, lots of great pictures and all kinds of cool stuff. And he says, no, not really, Mike. He said, I had a job to do. And my job was to produce the shows. And it wasn't my job to get my picture with anybody. And it wasn't my job to collect things and ask people to do things. He said, I only have one thing. I said, wow. And he also, as you know, you mentioned Ralph Emery. Ralph Emery did Pop Goes the Country, the Ralph Emery Show, and many other things. And Ralph was the quintessential professional, he was the Johnny Carson, I guess you'd say, of country music and radio personality. And he was married to Skeeter Davis, as you well know. But anyway, Bill says, no, I only have one thing. And he asked me if I wanted to see it, and he showed it to me. And it was a football. You'd think of all the things, it'd be a gold record or something really cool related to country music. It wasn't. It was a football that was signed on his show by all these famous quarterbacks, from Bart Starr to Johnny Unitas. I mean, you name a famous Y.A. Tittle, people from the 50s and 60s and 70s, and it was just unbelievable because they had put together a fundraising group of historic quarterbacks, so the greatest quarterbacks of all time came together to create a foundation, and they were on his show, and he said, you like that football? I said, yes, I do, sir. And that football is sitting in Dallas, Texas right now. And,
wow.
And that football, along with a letter from him, along with the videotape, the VHS tape of them all signing that football on the show. So it's a real cool piece, and I wouldn't take for it. But Bill Turner Sr. was a very special man to me, and obviously someone important to your family, and probably every country music musician from the 60s and 70s, from Winona on down. He used to do the military event every year. He produced that show, and Armed Forces. And he had lots of stories. And I told him one time, I said, Bill, you ought to write a book, man. I said, you've got all these great stories. And he said, oh, Mike, he said, I've been telling these stories so long I actually believe them. And so he was never gonna tell a story on anybody he'd ever worked with. He was just a private guy, and that's the way he was. And we were just good friends, and that was a blessing. You did something with Wayne Newton, is that right?
Yes, I did. There was a dear friend of mine who passed away a couple of years ago now. His name was Rhubarb Jones. His real name was Warren. Rhubarb Jones was 106, 104 country radio in Atlanta. And him and I became friends. He was a huge fan of my mom's. I'd rather meet your mom than Elizabeth Taylor, and I met her, and then Dolly. I love Vestal. He was a huge Vestal fan. So he had called me, and the story is short, is that we were on vacation, and I chartered a single-engine plane. My wife and my mom and I flew into Fort Payne, Alabama, to do June Jam, which I really didn't know how many people would be there, but I knew it was in June and it was going to be hot in Alabama, in DeKalb County. And we landed at the airport. They picked us up in a helicopter, set us down in the ball field behind the football field where there was 80 to 90,000 people. And who all was on the show? Billy Ray Cyrus was there, and a bunch of country artists. Billy Ray had Achy Breaky Heart was his #1 song at that time. And we went there, and she was there because Randy Owen in Alabama, Randy wanted my mom to sing God Bless America and then sing one of her songs. So she went out, sang God Bless America, and I forget what the other song was she sang. And I mean, it was just an amazing time. And we said, okay, love you guys, hug each other's neck. And Randy was standing there crying, and everybody was hugging necks, and we loved it. And we left, went back on vacation. And Rhubarb called me 2-3 months later or so, and he said, hey, Rick, you'll never believe who was just in the radio station. I said, who? He said, Wayne Newton. I said, really? Man, I said, that's different than country, isn't it, Rhubarb? Yeah, and said, man, what a nice guy. And he said, I just faxed him the lyrics to a song you wrote called We the People. You know, the impressions on our coins are engraved in our mind. The faces of our nation have stood proud down through time. Defending our country, many have died to keep us free. We spread the wings of freedom with dignity. I mean, it's a patriotic song.
Yep.
And so We the People, I said, you faxed him just the lyrics? He said, yeah, you didn't have email at that time. And about, 2 or 3 weeks later, I get a phone call. Wayne Newton's guy, his right-hand guy, called me and said, Wayne wants to meet you. I said, what? He wants to meet the guy that wrote the song and meet you. And I said, okay. So got me a ticket. They had me a hotel at the Hilton where Wayne was playing, where Elvis had been playing. And they flew me out there. Long story. I sat there, I saw his show, but before his show started, they give me directions to cut through the kitchen and this door and that door, back hallways at the big Hilton Casino showroom. Knocked on the door. There was the guy his name was Bear, let me in. I stood there for about 15 or 20 minutes and talked with Wayne. And I brought him a CD. Oh, I know your parents. I grew up in West Virginia. I know all their music. I know, oh, great. I love this song, and I want to record it when the time is right. I've got to record this song. Don't let anybody else record it right now. And I said, okay. So saw a show, went back home. Thought nothing about it. A month later, I guess, or so, the phone rings in the car. I answered it, and he said, this is Wayne, and I'm going to let you talk to Bear. Bear, come on the phone. The chief wants to come. That's what they call him. The chief wants to come to Nashville and record. I said, well, really? He said, he wants you to get the musicians and get a studio. I said, I know the best players in town. I'll get it. And I said, who's producing it? He said, you are. I said, what? He said, yeah, he wants you to produce the project. So I produced the project, and the short of it is that Wayne, while we're talking about songs, when we did a tracking session one day, he flew in and was there, and we tracked. And then Wayne said, I've got this letter that Elvis wrote 6 months before he passed away, wadded it up, threw it in the trash can, and a maid tried to sell it, and I sent Bear to go buy it. And I want to write a song. I want you to write a song that will help hurting people. And I said, okay. And so we waited and we waited. So getting close, only 4 days until we're supposed to have the last tracking session. And I called and I said, Bear, I said, I haven't seen the letter. He said, well, Wayne don't want to release the letter. I said, well, how can I write it if I don't have a copy and know? And so with that being said, they chartered a plane, flew me to Atlantic City. Wayne was doing 2 shows there, 2 different nights. And the next morning, I went in this little room, little piano. I took a piano player with me. Wayne come in, he laid the fax paper down and a copy of the letter, and I read it, and I wrote the song. One more phone call from a friend just to say how hard it's been, how their hopes and dreams have scattered in the wind. Can't they see that I'm there too? How it breaks my heart at two. Just to make it through the night's all I can do. Help me, Lord. Well, I wrote that because the actual letter said, in Elvis's handwriting said, it's quiet now. I'm glad everyone is gone. I probably won't sleep tonight. I don't need all of this. Help me, Lord! Exclamation point. And he signed it, Elvis. And that's in his handwriting, wadded up, threw it in the trash. And so that's, we cut the song, and I titled it, Help Me, Lord. And when we were tracking, I said, Wayne, you have got to do recitation and read the letter. That's the connect to help people. The song is called Help Me, Lord. It's a good song. Okay, fine, but you need to read this recitation. And so all the musicians had gone, and everything. And so Wayne got out there and read the letter. And so I put a couple of people's names on the song, and we recorded it. And then Wayne later on recorded, Lord, he spent over $200,000 when he was at the Hilton. I know he recorded a music video, and TNN, CMT was on at that time, and Boot Scoot and Boogie with Brooks and Dunn, and Reba had a song out. It was #1 over all of the country charts for 2 or 3 weeks. And it's an amazing song. And he shot the video and had an Elvis, I guess you'd say, shadow person as he was writing and standing against the window looking out. And he used original footage of Lisa Marie and Elvis's wedding. It's an incredible, it's called The Letter.
Is that the clip that I have?
That's the clip that you have.
Okay.
I don't know what clip you exactly have, but that's the clip that you have, my
Okay.
friend. That's it.
I've got
That's called The Letter, Wayne
let's,
Newton.
let's go to that real quick, and then I've got one more, and then we'll wrap up our interview for today. Hang on while we hit this Wayne Newton clip.
Love it, buddy.
One more phone call from a friend, just to say how hard it's been, how their hopes and dreams have scattered with the wind. They don't see that I'm there too, how it breaks my heart in two, just to make it through this night's all I can do. Help me, Lord, I need the sun to drive away the shadows in my mind,
All right. Well, I think you get a
We
good
didn't,
flavor.
we didn't get to to where he read the actual letter coming up.
Do we have that?
Yeah, it's on there. It's coming up.
Let's see if we can pull that up real quick.
Yeah, if you can fast forward it to that little section after that next chorus,
He's pulling it up.
there's nothing like live, doing it live. You can
Of course.
fast forward. Oh.
I'll probably not rest tonight.
Well, that's it.
I have no need for all of this. Help me, Lord. Help me, Lord. I need the sun to drive away the shadow.
Well, I think we got the idea. And when we do when I come to Nashville and we do our show there, Rick, we'll have more time to do some edits, and we'll show the whole thing.
Absolutely. Whatever you need, buddy. And you know, I need the sun. It was not the S-U-N. It was lyrically, it's the S-O-N. The sun to wipe the shadows from my mind.
Sure.
Wayne sung it. Wayne sung it great. I'm extremely proud of that one.
Yeah, it's neat. It's very neat. Well, you've been a part of some really great ones too. You know, Wayne was here probably about 9 months ago. He was here in Arlington performing, and I was supposed to be there. And in fact, we were going to do a meet and greet and all that good stuff. And then something happened, and I had to travel. So I missed the opportunity to meet him. I've seen him perform many times.
Yeah.
We've got a clip, and we're kind of out of time for today.
Okay.
But I want to go to a clip, and then we'll have a little conversation and wrap it up. But then I'm going to, of course, go to my devotional as well. So right now, I think, Trelvis, you've got a clip, and this, I don't think we need a big setup on it, but it is a part of the, the Gospel Music Association Hall of Fame. And I know you're familiar with it. And if everybody watches close, you're going to see Dolly Parton in the very beginning, and she's rolling to who the Hall of Fame members, and I think it's really kind of a neat piece.
Neat. I produced it. I love it.
Gospel music puts a smile on your face and joy in your heart.
Home in heaven by and by, when the truth is all so near me, I have Christ what you cheer me, I am riding through the sky.
I'd rather have Jesus than anything this world affords today.
He's all for everything, let's God his name, all the wealth I want, the world in vain, but if I could still, I wouldn't take nothing for the journey now. The King is coming, praise God, he's coming for me. Gonna wear me some new clothes, like a shiny white robe, walking around in new shoes, getting ready to move, oh, ready to move.
When I'm down, when I'm down and out, when my heart's filled with fear and doubt, when I lift up my head and He lifts up my heart and my troubles the storm rolled away. So I've made my reservation for my final destination. I'm changing my location to my mansion in the sky. Gonna wear me some new clothes, like a shiny white robe, walk around in new shoes, getting ready to move, ready to move.
That's great stuff, Rick. And I know that as we go into that show, of course, our friend Larry Gatlin is one of the hosts of that show for that evening. And Larry,
Right.
gosh, I can't tell you how many times I've been with Larry, and You know, he and the boys, Larry, Steve, and Rudy, they've been very great supporters. There's a commonality with the string of a lot of these people that we've talked about today, whether it's
Yeah.
the group Alabama and Randy, those guys, Randy, Jeff, and the others. They've all been, Charlie Daniel being another one, very big supporters of St. Jude Children's Hospital. You know, Nashville being that close to Memphis kind of makes that doable. But I've done auction events where we have raised money for St. Jude with all of these people. And so I had an opportunity to work with Larry, Steve, and them probably, 25 years ago at the Dallas Country Club. And then my mother knew them when they were kids and out in West Texas in the oil fields. And of course, whenever Larry and the boys are in town, I try to go and catch them. So, and I highly recommend that. You know, I think one of the things that's interesting, Rick, is we've lost so many great gospel and country performers in the last 5 to 10 years. It seems like they're kind of dropping like flies. And
Yeah.
you think about the history of country music. You were blessed to be a part of gospel and country at, to me, the perfect time. You could not have had a better, I'm sure everything wasn't smooth and everything wasn't perfect, but that's not, according to the Bible, it's not going to be. And we would have a false sense of self if we believed everything was supposed to go smooth. Do you have any final thoughts before, and you and I have talked, and we're planning on getting together again and maybe doing some collaboration and coming to Nashville. I'm looking forward to that opportunity. Anything parting before we leave the folks?
Well, you know, all things work together for the good of them that love Christ and his hearing. And I just know gospel and country were all blended together. And you ask someone, I'm talking and working with a couple of large artists. People call them secular artists, but they're not gospel, about recording a gospel project like a Wayne Newton and coming to town and coming here and recording. You know, where did you learn to sing? Well, in church. How did you learn to sing? Gospel music, opening the hymnal and reading, and that's how I learned. You know, Brad Paisley is a great friend of mine, and that's how you go. That's how people connected. The old thing of Bill Monroe, boys gather around the microphone here, and we're going to sing a gospel song, and they'd take their hats off and sing their gospel song, and that's such a time and blessing that people don't realize. Dan TV show called The Big Interview, and you can look it up. There is a group called rock and roll group called Styx. One of the singers, the blonde-headed guy. Oh, I'm terrible with that right now. Lives here in Nashville, out in the country, and they said, Dan Rather asked him, said, how did you sing your harmonies? How did you do that? Oh, well, my goodness, he said, it was in church and listening to gospel music. I used to, every Sunday morning, my mom would turn the TV wide open, and we'd hear the Happy Goodman family singing, Jubilee, Jubilee. And I'm just telling you, gospel music reaches so many people, and it's in your heart, it's in your spirit. And that is the best thing, is that the lyrics and the spirit of the song has to get inside. My good friend Luke Bryan, great guy. There's so many great people that are singing country nowadays that people think, whoa, country music is just all about this and that. No, Garth Brooks, you know, he knows, him and Trisha know where they learned. Reba knows, boy, they learned in Oklahoma and Texas like the Gatlins. They learned singing in church, and what the Spirit of the Lord comes through in a song, and it never leaves them. And it's the same with Blake Shelton's new song, God's Country.
Right.
You can't get any better than that. To try to explain it is, there's no way to explain it. But I am blessed. people that want to contact us, just contact Goodman Family Ministries, P.O. Box 1632, Brentwood, Tennessee 37024. Write us a letter. We'd love to hear from you.
That's great.
And we don't have a website up right now. We're going to put one up. But I want to stay connected with the people and encourage people that no matter what you're going through, the Lord is there. He's never left you. He's never forsaken you. And He will change it all for the betterment of you. Trust in the Lord. Have hope and faith in Him.
Thank you, Rick. Folks, that's Rick W. Goodman. And he, of course, multi-Grammy award-winning producer, president of Goodman and Associates and Circle of Friends Productions just outside of Nashville in Brentwood, Tennessee. And I'm so grateful to have him on today. I think the word was especially correct as we deal with these worldly issues right now, because we are in very spiritual times. We need to reflect on everything. The families, some families have come together, some families have fallen apart, and God is going to be the answer to that. And I do believe that. I think that this is what brings people together. It's what brings a country together, and it's what gets us on the right path. Things happen for a reason. I'm a big believer in that, and I know Rick does as well, and only God knows. But I am going to wrap this up with my book. This is, of course, the one you hear me reference all the time, Sarah Young, Jesus Calling. It's great. It's a great devotional, and I'm going to end with this today, and then we'll wrap it up. Thank me for your problems. As soon as your mind gets snagged on a difficulty, bring it to me with thanksgiving. Then ask me to show you my way to handle the situation. The very act of thanking me releases your mind from its negative focus. As you turn your attention to me, the problem fades in significance and loses its power to trip you up. Together, we can deal with the situation, either facing it head on or putting it aside for later consideration. Most of the situations that entangle your mind are not today's concerns. You have borrowed them from tomorrow. In this case, I lift the problem out of today and deposit it into the future. Where it is veiled from your eyes, in its place I give you my peace, which flows freely from my presence. So, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Mike McGavel Jones Show, Trelvis, our producer, and everyone here in Dallas that's been a part of this one, we thank you so much for being a part of our show today. We look forward to seeing you again next week. And from Dallas, Texas, the epicenter of the United States of America, God bless you, and pray for everyone. Stay healthy, and we'll see you next time. God bless. We bid you adieu from Dallas.